So I just kind of wanted to start off the bat with kind of explaining what this project is about. Hopefully we'll just, we'll get through it in time so you guys can go back to your evenings. Thank you so much for helping me out with this, guys. It means a lot. So my assignment, I'm really just talking about digital versus in-person therapy, as you kind of noticed from the Google form that I sent out. And I want to know how those two modes of therapy affect our interpersonal communication skills. So this means just kind of how we're interacting with people face to face in our everyday lives, not just in a professional setting or through therapy. So what I would love to see from you guys is just kind of almost like a group discussion where I'll just kind of throw out some questions here and there, and you guys can just kind of talk with one another. And I'd love to kind of just hear that dialogue and see what comes from it. So we will just get started with it then. But how many of you guys have done digital therapy?
I have.
All
I
right,
don't know how many other people have, but it's what I'm currently doing.
nice. And then in-person therapy, do we also do that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So how do you guys think that for those of you who have done digital therapy so far, how has that influenced your overall experience and the whole therapeutic process?
I feel like I have nothing like to compare it to because I didn't do it in person, but overall it was nice just to get to talk to somebody about my problems. And even though they weren't like in like person to like actually like help me physically, um, they still guided me uh the right ways, I feel like.
Luke, you said that you were doing digital therapy as well. Do you feel like that so far has been successful for you, or how has it compared to maybe other experiences you've had?
For me, it's felt way more successful than in person. But that's also because like I'm not the most personable person, I guess is the way to put it. I'm not a very social person. So for me, in person, it felt difficult to like connect with the person sitting in front of me and open up to them about stuff. So digital worked a lot better for me because I was in my own space, I was in my own comfort zone while also being able to get access to the help.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I never really thought of that computer almost being like a barrier that then makes you more vulnerable instead of preventing you from being vulnerable. That's so interesting. In your opinion, for those of you who have done in person versus digital, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the two? If you've only experienced one or the other, you can just talk about your experiences there. All right,
Just trying to think.
we could play around with that a bit more. I got a bunch of other questions that I can just throw at you guys. So if you don't have anything off the top of the head, that's okay. Um,
Wrote on a sticky note to keep thinking about it.
yeah, you're good. I guess we can go back though, Luke, to what you said about your point of, being in your own space and that kind of thing. Do you feel that not being in the physical room with your therapist kind of or your counselor affects your empathy skills or that kind of like connection between the therapist, or do you still feel like you get that when it's through a screen?
I think it can. In my case, it didn't. And I because for me also, even though it's a virtual meeting, my therapist still lives in the same city as me. Like I live in Phoenix and they're still in Phoenix, so a lot of like stuff talking about local stuff they still understand. And it's not like, they live in New York, I live in Phoenix, and that stuff is just kind of lost in translation. So I think it definitely can, but in my case, I got kind of lucky and it hasn't.
Yeah, definitely. I think also like the part of when you're doing online therapy. So I'm currently also doing online therapy, and my therapist also lives in my city, which has been very beneficial because I know that if you talk, this is the first thing that pops into my head, but if you talk about seasonal depression, but you live in New York, like you were saying, that's very different than Phoenix weather in December, but
Yeah.
you can still connect. I mean, if you have the therapist that's living in the same city as you can still relate. Versus if they were in New York, they'd be like, you know nothing of seasonal depression.
Yeah.
But do you guys think for those of us, because I've also done in-person therapy, and that was a couple years ago. And I guess I just kind of, for me personally, and I also wonder if, and this doesn't really have anything to do with my project, but I also wonder if it has something to do with girls talking in person to someone and feeling that kind of, very intentional connection with the other person. And I need to like see it in your face versus online, how that helps. Luke, you were saying, it's just, you said such a great point about the screen kind of acting as a barrier, but it still is making you vulnerable, which I never had thought of before. But Kate, I don't know, have you experienced that? Like if you're doing in person versus digital, does it matter as a girl?
I don't go to therapy and
That's
I should, but I feel like I just haven't had good resources. And actually it's been really hard because I live in Washington and it's really hard here to get someone like out of state on your insurance. It's like a whole insurance situation. And it's like really ironic because I work for a therapist's office. I want to become a therapist. I literally don't have access to good therapy because my school doesn't offer good resources. A therapist ghosted me.
Oh
So it's just like
no.
a really bad road because you want to do what you can for your mental health, but like there's literally so many barriers up. But personally, I think digitally would be better for me just because I am like running around, like schedule's crazy. And I think adding another physical stop would honestly be like a stressor. Like I'd be like, oh, like I have to go to therapy. Like this is so annoying. Like I just need to write a paper. So I feel like digital would be good. And then also it'd be a little less awkward, like becoming vulnerable, like rather than in person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And honestly, I think that's why it is so frustrating when it's going to sound so preachy of me to say, but just our society and how like, society does act all like, oh, very pro mental health and like get the help that you need and seek it out. And then we don't have resources to do that. Especially as a student, because I mean, I know we're all college aged individuals and we all have very busy schedules. We all have classes or jobs or both. And yeah, that's a really good point about if you were to go to a physical office, that takes a significant chunk out of your day that you have to set aside to get there, make sure you get there on time, feel like you're ready to go ahead and do it. Um, I know that because I have digital therapy right now, I probably wouldn't go if it was in person because that would mean I'd have to leave campus, I'd have to drive, I'd have to go versus just opening my laptop and being like, hey, and then dumping everything to the therapist. But what do you guys think about sites? I mean, you don't have to tell me, but for those of you who are doing digital therapy, what platforms do you use? Do you have recommendations for people like Kate, whose like insurance might not work through the school or they don't provide anything?
Well, for my situation, it's a place that offers in-person and digital, and I think it's called telehealth is the platform they use to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it like if you can find a place like that, I've heard a lot of very mixed results from places that are like exclusively online therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So finding a place that like is known to have in person and online would be my recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have a cousin that lived in Washington for a while, and yeah, it's hell for this kind of thing.
Yeah, going off of that same vein, I just kind of am interested in your guys' perspectives. I mean, Kate, I know you mentioned that you don't go to therapy, but you do work for a therapist. And I know we're all also in therapy. But do you guys have recommendations for people who have been thinking about it? Or how do you kind of have that conversation as a young adult with friends? Um, how has it changed your perspective after going to therapy? That kind of experience.
Yeah. One of my friends recommended me the app BetterHelp, and so I tried it for like a couple months, and when I was going through that situation, it did help, I believe, but it was sort of like a time where I was stuck at like that place, like at home. And so every time I had the sessions, I would go outside to sort of like emulate that I was in person,
Yeah.
even though like they didn't have an office. But if you're wanting to do online, I'd recommend trying out BetterHelp because they do have some like financial assistance things. So yeah.
Luke, do you have any recommendations for people?
I mean, for mine, it was literally just like my insurance. I just called them and then they just emailed me a list of places nearby that also offered online counseling. So it's like that. That's all I did was just called them. They were like, "This is what's available," and then just kind of called until one had appointments available. And I had I don't know if foresight is really the right word, but the experience of like I didn't want to do in person, so I was exclusively looking for online,
Mhm.
which definitely limits options because a lot of places, at least near where I live, say they want to do like a mix of in between of like, oh, if you can come in person, do it, but then we can also do online. So it like cuts down the options a lot when you tell them you only want to do online.
Right. Do you guys think that before you had started therapy, I know junior, you said that one of your friends just kind of recommended it to you, but do you guys find that society is more helpful when it comes to seeking out help for mental health, or is it kind of a juxtaposition when it comes to trying to seek help?
I feel like society has gotten like in a better place to have conversations surrounding mental health, but like I mean, and even in my situation, like resources are so scarce. Like I honestly think a lot of it's performative. Like people just want to seem like they're willing to help, but aren't actually. And like maybe that's very cynical, but I just think like in all the bureaucracy and things and people with offices, like personally at my school, I love my school. I don't want to like poo-poo on it, but it's just like they pretend to like have all these resources, but then someone ghosts you. Like it's just a little, I think they just want to appear a certain way, but not actually get to the root of it.
Right, right. It's very like performative help rather than like applicable. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. And then of course that's kind of tarnishing the whole goal altogether. I mean, when you are actually trying and then you're not met with the same amount of help that you're seeking, it definitely tarnishes like you ever trying again. I know that like that would be hard for me.
And they
Uh,
just lose credibility as providers as well.
yeah, that's a very real and harsh but honest statement. Yeah, I would agree with you on that front. Junior, did you raise your hand or are you fixing your glasses?
Oh no, I was fixing my
Okay,
glass.
I was like, I saw that. I was like, you don't have to raise your hand. um, so for my digital therapy friends here, have you guys seen that your experiences with digital therapy has impacted your ability to talk in person with people about mental health, or not really any difference?
I feel like when my friend was like, she recommended me therapy, I feel like it was like easier to talk to her about those sorts of things. And so yeah, I feel like it could be like a good gateway, I guess, to opening that conversation. Because I mean, therapy is good, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, for me, there wasn't really much worse I could have gotten. I was I was very shut in, very antisocial for a long time after high school, and then like there it was really only going up from there for me, and it didn't feel like there was. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it because it didn't feel like it was stagnating, Like I feel like if in a normal situation I would have gotten worse at communicating, I would have just not gotten better, but I feel as though through digital therapy, I have gotten a lot better at that.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I agree with Luke. I'm sorry, I just answered your previous question, but prior to therapy, I think I was sort of a people person already, but there's things that you don't talk to people normally about, like just in a normal conversation, which is that's fine because that's why we have therapists, so that we can talk about the things that we can't talk about to other people. So I do think it did help me like be more open and more vulnerable to like people outside of therapy.
hmm. Yeah, this is great, guys. I have about like 8 minutes ish left because I guess Zoom only gives you this like cute little free trial unless you pay for something. So that's annoying. But I just want to kind of open the floor to you guys and just if you want to share experiences that you had through therapy, what you would like to see differently. I know Kate talked a little bit about the institutional side of it, which is great. And I think should be talked about more. But just kind of your guys's before or after, but I don't want to talk too much because we're low key on the clock. But I just kind of want to open it to the floor to you guys if you guys want to compare experiences or anything.
Yeah, no, totally. I do feel that like I agree with Catherine. She said about insurance and stuff. Therapy is like really expensive uh, for some reason. But like friends are free. So, like, I don't know.
It's
They
true.
should totally make it cheaper. Even though it is hard for the therapist because they do have so many clients and so many things to keep track of. But I feel like it's like almost like healthcare. I don't know if therapy is free in Canada, but I do feel like it should be cheaper. So
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me
Go ahead.
was definitely like finding the right therapist, I guess, because there before the one I'm currently seeing, I had like a short get to know them appointment with like three. And every single one, when I mentioned that one of the reasons I was there was because I have severe ADHD and I'm trying to work through it, they didn't want to set up a second appointment because they said like, oh, like I can't really help you with that. Like, oh, that's not really my field of expertise. And it's like, well, like I'm here for therapy for mental health. And then you tell me like, oh, not that mental health. And it was very off-putting for me in that scenario and like almost made me not keep going to try and get more therapy. But thankfully I did. And now I found someone who is great. But it was just a very odd experience that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. Kate, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I just feel like it's so counterintuitive because when people are taking that extra step to get help, like that's already a barrier that's really hard to cross. And when you're being so vulnerable and then you get shut down, and it's so easy to get deterred from finding therapists. Like personally, like right now, I'm like, whatever, like I have finals, like I'm just gonna give up for now. We'll try again later, we'll circle back later. So I think it's really a counterproductive system. And I think people just need to be more readily available and easier access. And if they aren't, we shouldn't be encouraging everyone to go to therapy because you can't. So I don't know. There needs to be a different conversation being had besides the one of just like, take care of your mental health. Like, okay, thanks for nothing, you know? So I don't know. It's just a really hard cycle.
No, absolutely. I would totally agree with that. I think one of the hardest challenges for myself was before I went back to therapy was like, oh, well, I've got a lot of really great friends. I've got a really good support system. Like my family's great. Like I've got people I can talk to. But then it's that difference of recognizing like, oh, I might have like emotionally mature people in my life, but that doesn't mean that they know how to fix my life. Like they're there to hear and to support, but you actually need someone that's like trained and is professional to work with you because their number one priority is you. And like that's how mental health help should be, in my opinion. And so, Luke, what you were saying about ADHD, I can't even fathom that. Like, I have ADHD and sometimes it's miserable, and I can't even fathom somebody being like, sorry, can't, just because of that. Like, that would turn me off from it forever. So I think that is like your therapist should have you as their number one priority, because that is their job. And I think that should be that conversation that Kate, you were mentioning. Like, it shouldn't just be like, oh, everyone should get help. It's everyone should get help for themselves. Like, it should be direct. It should be about you. And it shouldn't just be kind of like, oh, well, you don't fit my mold of who I normally help. It's like, you're supposed to help. Yeah, but I've got about like 3 minutes. Do we have anything else that we'd like to talk about? I know it was kind of brief.
Going off of what you just said, Maddie, I think it's really easy to make excuses. Like, a lot of times I've like taken something I'm dealing with and then compared it to, this is always like the example people use, but starving kids in another country. Like, okay, you need to be grateful for what you have. And I honestly think church has reinforced that narrative. Like, you are so surrounded by people, you're blessed by a loving community, you don't have problems. And so I think it's easy to be like, well, my life is going well, why do I need to talk to someone? But these are like literal medical conditions and issues that we do have to deal with. So I think, to your point, like, yes, we have great communities, but that doesn't mean that we don't need therapy, because I think everyone should at least try therapy. And maybe it's not for you, but I think you got to give it the old college try.
I love it. Yeah, totally. Any closing statements, gentlemen? All right. Well, I'm sorry that this was so brief, but you guys seriously killed it. And I love that it was just casual and conversational. And you guys are literally my heroes for helping me with this. I will let you guys all know kind of what comes of it and the whole project. And I hope that if you are still in school, finals go amazing. And if you're not, that life just goes amazing. Well, both, if you are doing finals, that too. But I just appreciate you guys so much. And if I don't see you, happy holidays and stay safe. And yeah, so thank you guys. All right.
Thank you, Maddie. Bye.
Hey, yeah, thank you.